Have you ever used the term actually or literally when describing something, knowing full well there are cases when what you said might not be true? Of course you have. Use it as a means to push across a point or drive home emphasis. Rarely are the terms used in their actual definition, but now I wish to use them properly in the context they deserve. The company Electronic Arts is an actual parasite. Let's talk about it, shall we? Before we begin, let's look at the definition of what a parasite is. It's an entity that exploits or abuses the hospitality of others depending on another's existence for support without making useful or adequate return. I want you to keep that definition in mind. I'm going to start listing off some companies, and I want you to tell me what they all have in common. Ready? Maxis, Bullfrog, Origin, DreamWorks Interactive, Black Box Games, Pandemic, Playfish, Newfex, and Visceral Games. If you said that they were all companies that likely created some of the fondest games of a lot of people, you'd be right. You would also be right in saying that they were all companies absorbed into the malignant entity that is EA, used and abused for all their worth, then spit out into the world upon EA's stupidly high and unrealistic demands not being met. Sounds pretty close to that definition we heard before, huh? EA is now infamous in this regard, finding and acquiring companies they see any real amounts of worth in, then muddling with their newly acquired IPs until they are a husk of their former self and then throwing them away when the profit stops trickling in. Plants vs. Zombies and Dungeon Keeper were both titles that carved out very unique yet enjoyable niches in their genre, the former being an adorable take on the tower defense genre, while the latter was the first in its kind of establishing a base defense-like game where you are more the villain than the hero. If you were to look at their current sequels now, Plants vs. Zombies 2 keeps that interesting design of tower defense, but sliced out your options of plants for the sake of making them microtransactions to an egregious degree. Dungeon Keeper Mobile outright pesters you to put in money, and if you don't, I hope you're ready to wait upwards of 24 hours to remove a single block of dirt. That isn't a joke, by the way. PopCap, the creators of Plants vs. Zombies, is still plugging along. Bullfrog, however, not so much, first being absorbed into EA UK in 2001, only for it to also be closed in 2011. Going beyond just EA being parasites, they are liars, former criminals, and manipulators who do a marvelous job showcasing every greedy, abhorrent, and corrupt practice that happens in the AAA video game industry. And again, none of this is hyperbole. Anyone who keeps their eye on the video game industry can look at their past misdeeds over the last few years and see blatant abuse of the system for monetary gain. In 2017, EA CFO Blake Jorgensen said upon the closure of Visceral Games and the cancellation of the Star Wars game they were set to release that, and I quote, "As we kept reviewing the game, it continued to look like a style of game, a much more linear game that people don't like as much today as they did 5 to 10 years ago. And yet, year after year, we are shown that statement to be completely and utterly false, especially in 2018, where the most bought game was exactly that linear story base-driven game title that apparently people don't like anymore." While this isn't instinctively a lie, and there is some area of him being right, with the prior best-selling games of the year being those multiplayer games like your Call of Duties, it's safe to say that a single-player game always cracks the top 5 most bought games every single year. What is a lie, however, is the concept of EA putting microtransactions into their game, then removing them and saying to their investors that the removal isn't going to hurt their profit margin. Okay, either you need to put in microtransactions into your game to make a profit, or you put microtransactions into your game simply for the sake of more money with less work. You get one or the other, EA. You can't pick both here. You're lying to either us or your investors. Who is it? As I stated before, the criminal tag no longer suits them, but for a decent time, until Belgium was setting out to outright sue them, they continued to sell loot boxes knowing full well they were against their laws, and only recently buckled to remove them. At this point, you might be saying, "Man, you just hate EA because it's the cool thing to hate them." No, I hate EA because they stand as a problem that we as gamers have allowed. They don't care about us as consumers, so they continue to push farther and farther with more and more insidious practices, all while feigning some ignorance that they are blind to their own greed. They've ruined countless video games, their companies, and careers simply for the sake of money. I have no doubt that if EA could get away with it, they'd take a dump in a box, attempt to sell it to you, and immediately after demand another payment to open the box, and yet another for something to make the contents more palpable. My wish with this video is maybe, just maybe, one less person buying into their greed, a slow trickle-like effect to eventually enough people to catch onto their lies, their deceit, their corruption, that things can get better. A step forward for our video games to not be hashed up on release. A step towards buying a completed finished product and microtransactions to stop trying to cheat people out of their full product. A step towards being treated as something better than just a pile of excrement by them. Hopefully, just maybe, EA will start to improve and our video games will simply be just that, fun, simple, all over again, without having to worry about being dicks. Let's be honest though, they won't. I'm just a tiny YouTuber who will likely never crack 1K subs. They won't notice me. People will keep buying into their lies, keeping them profitable, to keep spouting the same regurgitated shit after each game as their greed keeps right on ballooning out of control. Oh well. At least Apex Legends is fun. Even if Anthem's probably gonna suck.